She sat quietly in seat 14C, just another invisible passenger. Nobody knew her secret. But when both engines died at 35,000 feet and the plane became a falling coffin, fighter jets appeared in the sky. They called out a name that hadn't been spoken in 3 years. Her name. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The boarding gate at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport was crowded with tired travelers. Flight 2847 to Los Angeles was delayed by 30 minutes. People sat in uncomfortable chairs, staring at their phones, drinking overpriced coffee. Maya Rodriguez sat in the corner, wearing jeans and a simple gray hoodie. Her black hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She had a paperback book in her lap, but she wasn't really reading it. She was just another passenger. Nobody looked at her twice. That was exactly how she wanted it. Maya was 34 years old. For the past 3 years, she had lived a quiet life in Portland. She worked as a business consultant. She lived in a small apartment. She went to coffee shops and grocery stores like everyone else. She was invisible. But 3 years ago, Maya's life was completely different. 3 years ago, she was Captain Maya Phantom Rodriguez. She was an F-35 Lightning II fighter pilot. One of only 50 women in the entire United States Air Force who flew the most advanced fighter jet in the world. She had flown combat missions in 3 different countries. She had medals locked in a drawer at home. She had made decisions at 600 miles per hour that saved lives. Her call sign was Phantom because she could appear and disappear in the sky like a ghost. She was that good. In her squadron, she was legendary. She had flown missions that were still classified. Missions where one wrong decision would have meant death, not just for her, but for the people on the ground counting on her. She remembered the day she earned her call sign. It was during a training exercise over the Nevada desert. She was flying against 2 experienced pilots, both men with twice her flight hours. The exercise was simple: evade and survive. They had to find her on radar and lock onto her aircraft. They never did. Maya had used terrain, speed, and precise maneuvering to stay invisible. She appeared behind them, locked onto both aircraft, and disappeared again before they even knew she was there. After they landed, her squadron commander had laughed and said, "You're like a phantom up there. That's your call sign now." The name stuck. And over the years, it became more than just a call sign. It became her identity. But nobody at this airport gate knew any of that. Nobody knew that the tired woman in the hoodie had flown missions that were still classified. Nobody knew she could land a fighter jet on a carrier in a storm. Nobody knew she had trained dozens of young pilots who now flew combat missions themselves. And that was exactly what Maya wanted. She had left the Air Force because she was exhausted. Exhausted from the pressure, exhausted from being the female pilot instead of just the pilot. Exhausted from deployments that took her away from everyone she loved. Exhausted from the weight of knowing that every decision she made could mean life or death. She wanted to be normal. Invisible. Free from the crushing responsibility of being excellent every single day. Her mother had cried when Maya told her she was leaving the Air Force. "But you love flying," her mother had said. "It's who you are." "I'm tired of who I am," Maya had replied. "I want to be someone else." So she moved to Portland. Got a consulting job that paid well but meant nothing. Rented a small apartment where nobody knew her past. She stopped talking about planes. She stopped thinking about missions. She tried to forget the feeling of breaking the sound barrier, the rush of takeoff, the precision of formation flying. She tried to become someone ordinary. For 3 years, it worked. She was invisible. She was normal. She was just Maya, the quiet consultant who worked from coffee shops and lived alone. Her old squadron mates sometimes called. "We miss you, Phantom," they would say. "Come visit the base. Come fly with us again. But Maya always made excuses. Going back felt like admitting she had made a mistake. And she didn't want to admit that. She had made her choice. She had to live with it. Even when she saw fighter jets fly overhead, she would look away. Even when she heard that distinctive sound of military aircraft, she would ignore it. She was done with that life. Or so she told herself. Final boarding call for Flight 2847 to Los Angeles, the gate agent announced. Maya stood up and joined the line of passengers shuffling onto the plane. She handed her boarding pass to the agent, who scanned it without even looking at her face. Invisible, as always. She walked down the jetway and onto the aircraft. She found her seat, 14C. Middle seat, the worst seat on any plane, the seat that nobody wants. She squeezed past a businessman in the aisle seat and settled in. A young woman with a baby sat down in the window seat. The baby was maybe 6 months old, already fussing and crying. The mother looked exhausted and apologetic. Sorry, the woman said nervously. He doesn't like flying. I tried to get him to nap before the flight, but he won't sleep. It's okay, Maya said with a polite smile. Babies cry. It's what they do. Don't worry about it. The businessman in the aisle seat put in his earbuds and closed his eyes. He clearly wanted nothing to do with either of them. He pulled out a sleep mask and settled in for the flight. Maya pulled out her book again. It was a thriller about a spy trying to escape from enemy territory. She had read it before, but she couldn't remember how it ended. She tried to focus on the words, but her mind wandered. It always did on planes. She couldn't help but listen to the sounds. The engine spooling up, the hydraulic systems engaging, the flight attendants going through their safety demonstration, the clicks and beeps of the cockpit systems running through their pre-flight checks. She heard everything. She understood everything. But she said nothing. That was the hardest part of being invisible. Knowing things and not being able to say them. Understanding systems and procedures that other people took for granted. Hearing problems before they became emergencies. But she stayed quiet. Because speaking up meant revealing herself. And revealing herself meant losing the invisible life she had built. The flight attendants moved through the cabin, checking seatbelts and overhead bins. One of them smiled at Maya as she passed. Just a polite, professional smile. The kind of smile you give to strangers. Maya smiled back. Another invisible interaction. The plane pushed back from the gate. Maya felt the familiar sensation of movement. The tug towing them away from the terminal, the turn onto the taxiway, the slow roll toward the runway. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Deep, confident, professional. Good afternoon, folks. This is Captain Steve Morrison. We're number 3 for takeoff. Should have you in the air in about 10 minutes. Flight time to Los Angeles is about 2 hours and 15 minutes. Weather looks good all the way down the coast. Sit back, relax, and we'll get you there safely. Maya closed her eyes as the plane taxied to the runway. She felt every turn, every acceleration, every adjustment. She could visualize exactly what the pilots were doing in the cockpit. The pre-takeoff checklist, the final systems checks, the communication with the tower. She knew all of it. She had done it thousands of times. But not in 3 years. Not since she walked away. The plane stopped at the runway threshold. Maya felt the engine spool up to full power. The brakes released. The acceleration pushed her back into her seat. The nose lifted. The ground fell away. They were airborne. She should have felt relaxed. She should have felt like any other passenger, heading to Los Angeles for business or pleasure, trusting the pilots to do their job. But something felt wrong. Maya couldn't explain it. It was just a feeling. A sense that something wasn't right. She had learned to trust that feeling during her military career. The instructors called it situational awareness. The ability to sense danger before you consciously understood what the danger was. Pilots who ignored their instincts didn't survive. She opened her eyes and looked around. Everything seemed normal. Passengers were settling in. Some were reading. Some were already asleep. The baby next to her was still crying, but quieter now. The mother was rocking him gently, whispering soothing words. But that feeling wouldn't go away. Maya pressed her hand against the window and looked out. They were climbing through 10,000 feet. The ground was far below. Everything looked normal. But it didn't sound normal. 20 minutes into the flight, Maya heard it. A change in the engine sound, subtle. So subtle that nobody else would notice. But Maya had thousands of hours in cockpits. She knew what engines should sound like. She knew the pitch, the rhythm, the steady roar of properly functioning turbines. The left engine was running rough. She sat up straighter, listening carefully. Her heart rate increased. She pressed her ear closer to the window, trying to isolate the sound. Then she heard the right engine change too. Both engines were having problems. Her mind immediately started calculating. Engine problems at this altitude. Distance to the nearest airport. Glide ratio of a commercial airliner. Emergency procedures. She forced herself to stay calm. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe the pilots were just adjusting power settings. Maybe she was being paranoid. But her instincts screamed at her that something was very wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Morrison. We're experiencing some minor technical difficulties with our engines. Nothing to be concerned about. Just as a precaution, we're going to return to Seattle. Flight attendants, please remain seated. The tone of his voice told Maya everything. He was lying. This wasn't minor. This was serious. Passengers around her started murmuring. Some looked worried. Others seemed confused. The businessman took out his earbuds and sat up. What's going on? He asked nobody in particular. Engine trouble, someone said. Is that bad? They said it's just a precaution. Maya said nothing. She just listened. The plane banked left, turning back toward Seattle. The engines were still running, but the sound was wrong. Very wrong. And then both engines quit. The sound changed from a steady roar to an eerie, whistling silence. The plane was still flying, but it was gliding. No power. No thrust. Just momentum and gravity. Around her, passengers started to notice. Why is it so quiet? What's that sound? Are we okay? Why aren't the engines working? Maya's training kicked in instantly. She knew exactly what was happening. Dual engine failure, both engines dead. The plane was now a 150,000-pound glider falling from the sky. From 28,000 feet, they had maybe 15 minutes before they had to be on the ground. Maybe less, depending on wind conditions and the pilot's ability to maintain optimal glide speed. This was bad. This was really bad. The captain's voice came back on, and this time, Maya could hear the controlled panic underneath his professional tone. Ladies and gentlemen, we have lost both engines. We are declaring an emergency and will attempt to return to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin for emergency landing. Passengers, please review your safety cards and listen carefully to the flight attendant's instructions. The cabin erupted in panic. People were crying. Screaming, praying, the baby next to Maya was shrieking at the top of his lungs. The mother was crying, holding him tight. The businessman was gripping his armrests, his knuckles white. We're going to die, someone shouted. Oh God, oh God, oh God, another person was repeating. I don't want to die. Maya sat perfectly still. Her mind was working at incredible speed, processing options, calculating possibilities. She looked at the flight attendants. They were trying to maintain order, but they were scared too. She could see it in their faces. She looked out the window. They were over water. Puget Sound, probably. She could see islands below. No good landing spots. If they ditched in the water, most people wouldn't survive. The water was too cold. The impact would be too severe. And even if people survived the impact, hypothermia would kill them within minutes. They needed to reach the runway. But from this altitude, with no engines, that was almost impossible for pilots trained only in commercial aviation. But Maya wasn't trained only in commercial aviation. She had trained for scenarios that civilian pilots never even imagined. She had practiced emergency landings with no engines, no hydraulics, no electrical systems. She had flown damaged aircraft back to base when everyone else said it was impossible. The flight attendants were shouting instructions now. Heads down. Stay down. Brace position. Put your head between your knees. Hold your ankles. Passengers were screaming. Some were calling loved ones on their phones, saying goodbye. Others were writing final text messages. The cabin was chaos. Maya looked toward the front of the plane. She could see the cockpit door. Behind that door, 2 pilots were fighting for their lives and the lives of 284 passengers. She made a decision. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. "Ma'am." "Sit down," a flight attendant yelled at her, rushing over. "You need to be in your seat." "I need to speak to the captain," Maya said calmly. "That's not possible. The cockpit is locked." "Sit down now." "I'm a pilot," Maya said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Military pilot. F-35 Lightning II. 12 years of service. I've trained for this exact scenario. I can help." The flight attendant stared at her for a moment, trying to process this information while people screamed around them. "Please," Maya said, looking directly into the flight attendant's eyes. "I know what I'm doing. Let me help save these people." The flight attendant made a split-second decision. She grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her toward the cockpit. She pounded on the door with her fist. "Captain. Captain Morrison. There's a passenger who says she's a military pilot. She says she can help." There was a pause. Then the intercom crackled. "Send her in." The door unlocked. The flight attendant pulled it open. Maya stepped into the cockpit, and the door closed behind her with a heavy thunk. Captain Morrison looked back at her. He was maybe 50 years old, gray hair, lines of stress etched deep in his face. His co-pilot, a younger man, was frantically working the controls, trying to restart the engines. "Who are you?" Morrison demanded, his voice tight with stress. "Captain Maya Rodriguez, United States Air Force, retired," Maya said, her voice calm and professional. "Call sign Phantom. F-35 Lightning II pilot. I have 3,000 hours in high-performance aircraft and extensive emergency procedure training. I can help." Morrison looked at her for exactly 2 seconds, making a rapid assessment. Then he made his decision. "Get in here. Sit down." Maya moved to the jump seat behind the captain's chair and immediately scanned the instruments. Her eyes moved rapidly across the panel, taking in information, processing, calculating. Altitude, 24,000 feet and descending at approximately 2,000 feet per minute. Airspeed, 280 knots, which was too fast for optimal glide. Both engine instruments showed 0 power, 0 fuel flow, 0 RPM. Distance to Seattle Airport, approximately 35 miles. Glide ratio of a Boeing 737, approximately 17:1 under perfect conditions. They were not going to make it. Not with standard procedures. "We've tried everything," the co-pilot said, his voice shaking. "Standard restart procedures. Emergency restart procedures. Crossbleed start. Nothing works. Both engines are completely dead. I don't understand what happened. What happened before they quit? Maya asked, leaning forward to study the engine instruments more carefully. Nothing unusual, Morrison said. We were climbing normally. All systems were green. Then the left engine started running rough. About 30 seconds later, the right engine did the same thing. Then they both just quit. Simultaneously. Maya's mind raced through possibilities. Dual engine failure was almost impossible in modern aircraft unless there was a common cause. Fuel contamination, bird strike, volcanic ash. But they would have seen birds or ash. Fuel contamination, she said. Probably water in the fuel. At this altitude, it would freeze and block the fuel lines. That's why your restart procedures aren't working. You're trying to pump contaminated fuel into frozen lines. Morrison looked at her with a mixture of hope and desperation. If that's true, how do we fix it? We can't fix it, Maya said. But we can work around it. In the Air Force, we train for fuel contamination scenarios. There's a technique called thermal purge combined with a high-energy restart. It's not in any commercial aviation manual because it's risky and can damage the engines. But damaged engines that run are better than perfect engines that don't. The co-pilot turned to look at her. What do we do? Maya took a deep breath. This was it. The moment where she stopped being invisible and became who she really was. First, we need to use the auxiliary power unit to generate maximum heat. Redirect all environmental control system heat to the engine nacelles. The cabin will get cold, but we need to warm those fuel lines enough to melt any ice crystals. How long will that take? Morrison asked, watching the altimeter spin downward. 90 seconds minimum. Maybe 2 minutes. We're at 22,000 feet. We don't have 2 minutes. Then we make time, Maya said firmly. Reduce your descent rate. You're too steep. Nose up 2 degrees. Reduce airspeed to 250 knots. That'll give us better glide efficiency. Morrison pulled back gently on the yoke. The nose came up slightly. The descent rate decreased from 2,000 feet per minute to 1,500. Good, Maya said. Now engage maximum APU power and redirect all heat to the engines. The co-pilot's hands moved across the controls, entering commands. Done. Heat redirected. It's going to get cold in the cabin. Passengers will survive being cold, Maya said. They won't survive crashing. Now we wait for the heat to work. They waited. Every second felt like an hour. The altimeter kept spinning down. 20,000 feet. 19,000 feet. 18,000 feet. Through the cockpit windows, Maya could see the landscape below. They were over land now, approaching the outskirts of Seattle. But they were still too high and too far away. Okay, Maya said. Time to try the restart. This is going to be different from what you're used to. We're going to do what's called a hot start. Fuel control to manual override. The co-pilot hesitated, looking at Morrison. Do it, Morrison ordered. Manual override engaged, the co-pilot confirmed. Good. Now we're going to dump fuel directly into the combustion chamber while hitting it with maximum ignition power. In a fighter, we have a specific switch for this. In a commercial aircraft, you have to do it manually. On my count, advance the fuel flow control to 40%, then to full over 3 seconds. Captain Morrison, you hold continuous ignition. This could blow the engine, Morrison said. Yes, it could, Maya agreed. But right now, we have 2 engines that don't work. If this blows one engine, we're in the same situation. If it works, we have thrust. We try engine 1 first. If it lights off, we analyze before trying engine 2. Ready? Morrison's jaw tightened. He nodded. Co-pilot, on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. The co-pilot pushed the fuel control lever forward. Maya watched the engine instruments intently, looking for any sign of response. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the exhaust gas temperature gauge flickered. "Come on," Maya whispered. "Come on, baby." The turbine speed indicator began to move. Slowly at first, then faster. 10%. 15%. 20%. "We've got ignition," the co-pilot shouted. The left engine roared back to life with a sound that was the most beautiful thing Maya had ever heard. The engine speed climbed rapidly. 30%. 40%. 50%. "Level off at 60%, Maya said. "Don't push it too hard. The engine might be damaged." The co-pilot leveled off the throttle. The engine stabilized at 60% power. It was running rough, but it was running. Throughout the cabin, passengers felt the plane shudder as thrust returned. The descent rate slowed. Hope returned. But they were still descending. One engine wasn't enough to maintain altitude. They needed both. "Okay," Maya said. "Same procedure for engine 2. Ready?" They repeated the sequence. This time, Maya counted more slowly, giving the thermal purge more time to work. 3, 2, 1, mark. The co-pilot advanced the fuel control. Maya held her breath. The EGT gauge jumped immediately. The engine caught faster this time. "Engine 2 is lit," Morrison shouted. Both engines were running now. The plane was flying again. Not perfectly. The engines were damaged and running rough. But they were running. The descent stopped. Then slowly, they began to climb. "Seattle approach, this is Flight 2847, Morrison said into his radio, his voice thick with emotion. "We have successfully restarted both engines. Repeat, both engines are online, requesting priority landing, runway 16 right." The radio crackled with the air traffic controller's voice, and Maya could hear the amazement in it. "Flight 2847, Seattle approach. Outstanding work. You're cleared for immediate approach to runway 16 right. Emergency equipment is standing by." Morrison turned to look at Maya. His eyes were red with unshed tears. "You just saved 284 lives, he said quietly. "I don't even know your name." "Maya Rodriguez," she said. "And you're not safe yet. Those engines are damaged. We need to get on the ground as soon as possible." But then something happened that changed everything. A new voice came over the radio. A voice that Maya recognized immediately. A military voice. A fighter pilot's voice. "Flight 2847, this is Viper 1. We have you on radar." Maya's heart stopped. "Viper 1. That was an F-35 call sign." Morrison responded. "Viper 1, this is Flight 2847. We have partial power restored. Both engines running but damaged." "Copy that, 2847. We were conducting training exercises in the area when we heard your emergency call. We have 4 F-35s in your vicinity. We're vectoring to your position now to provide escort." Through the cockpit windscreen, Maya saw them. 4 F-35 Lightning II fighters, approaching from the east. They moved into formation, 2 on each side of the commercial airliner. They were beautiful. Sleek. Deadly, powerful. And so familiar it hurt. "Flight 2847, Viper 1. We're going to stay with you all the way to the runway. You're not alone up here." "Thank you, Viper 1, Morrison said. "We appreciate the escort. 2847, we understand there's a military pilot aboard your aircraft who assisted with the engine restart." Can we speak to that pilot? Morrison looked at Maya. She hesitated. This was it. The moment her invisible life ended forever. She reached for the spare headset with a trembling hand. She put it on. She pressed the transmit button. Viper 1, this is Captain Maya Rodriguez. There was a pause. A long pause. Then the lead pilot's voice came back, and it was filled with shock. Say again. Did you say Captain Maya Rodriguez? Affirmative. Call sign. Maya closed her eyes. She hadn't said it in 3 years. Phantom, she said quietly. Call sign Phantom. The radio exploded with voices. Holy shit. Phantom, the Phantom. From the 421st. No way. Viper 1, confirm. Is that really Phantom? The lead pilot's voice cut through the chaos, professional but filled with emotion. Phantom, this is Viper 1. Call sign Maverick. I flew with you over Afghanistan in 2019. Red Squadron. You saved my aircraft when I took ground fire and lost hydraulics. You talked me through an emergency landing while we were both still in the combat zone. You stayed on my wing until I was wheels down. You're a legend, ma'am. Maya felt her throat tighten. She remembered that mission. She remembered Maverick's panicked voice on the radio. She remembered staying with him, talking him through every step, even though they were both still being shot at. I remember, Maverick, she said, and her voice was shaking. Good to hear your voice. Ma'am, the honor is all mine. When we heard there was an airliner in trouble and then heard your name. Phantom, every F-35 pilot in this region volunteered to escort you home. You're not just another aircraft to us. You're family. Throughout the cockpit, Morrison and his co-pilot were staring at Maya with new understanding. This wasn't just a retired pilot. This was someone legendary. Another voice came over the radio. Phantom, this is Viper 3. Call sign Shadow. You trained me at Nellis in 2018. You were my instructor pilot. You taught me everything I know about emergency procedures. You're the reason I'm alive today. It's an honor to fly with you again, ma'am. Maya felt tears running down her face now. She had tried so hard to leave this behind. She had tried to forget. But they hadn't forgotten her. All Viper aircraft, this is Phantom, she said, her voice stronger now. Thank you for being here. Let's bring this bird home safely. Roger that, Phantom, Maverick said. We're with you all the way. The 4 F-35s tightened their formation around the commercial airliner. 2 on the left, 2 on the right, boxing it in, protecting it, guiding it home. Maya helped Morrison and his co-pilot run through the approach checklist. Both engines were running, but they were damaged and unstable. They needed to get on the ground quickly, but they also needed to do it right. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin for landing, Morrison announced over the intercom. We're going to be on the ground in 5 minutes. Maya looked out at the F-35s flying beside them. She could see the pilots in their cockpits. They all gave her a thumbs up as they caught sight of her through the window. She gave a thumbs up back. Phantom, Viper 1. Permission to perform a flyby after you land? Maya smiled through her tears. Permission granted, Maverick. Show these people what an F-35 can do. Roger that, ma'am. It will be our honor. The landing was smooth. Captain Morrison put the plane down gently on runway 16 right. The wheels chirped on the pavement. The nose gear settled. The brakes engaged. Emergency vehicles raced alongside them, but they weren't needed. The plane rolled to a safe stop on the taxiway. And then the 4 F-35s screamed overhead in tight formation, so low and so fast that the sonic boom shook the entire airport. They pulled up vertical, climbing straight into the sky in a display of raw power and grace that took everyone's breath away. Then they did something that Maya had never seen before. They broke formation and began flying in a precise pattern, leaving contrails behind them in the clear blue sky. The contrails formed letters. Pigeontion. Her call sign, written in the sky for everyone to see. The F-35s had literally spoken her name. Written it in the sky so that everyone on the ground could read it. Inside the cockpit, Morrison was staring up at the sky with his mouth open. "They just wrote your name in the sky," he said in disbelief. "Yes," Maya said quietly. "They did." "Who are you?" the co-pilot asked, his voice filled with awe. "I'm someone who tried to be invisible," Maya said. "But today, I remembered who I really am." Morrison turned to her with tears in his eyes. "Captain Rodriguez, you saved this aircraft and everyone on it. The passengers need to know what you did. Will you stay while we deplane?" Maya looked up at the sky, at her name written in contrails that were slowly fading. The F-35s had spoken her name. They had called her home. They had reminded her that some things can't be hidden forever. "Yes," she said. "I'll stay." When the passengers began to deplane, Captain Morrison made an announcement over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, before you leave, I need to tell you something. When both our engines failed today, we were minutes away from a catastrophic crash. We had no power. No options. But we had something else. We had a passenger on board who knew exactly what to do. A former United States Air Force F-35 fighter pilot who helped us restart our engines using military procedures that saved all our lives. Captain Maya Rodriguez, call sign Phantom. She's a hero. And I want you all to know her name." Maya stood up from the jump seat. She took a deep breath. Then she stepped into the cabin. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then every single passenger began to clap. The applause started slowly and then built into a thunderous roar. People were standing. Crying, reaching out to touch her hand as she walked down the aisle. Some were taking pictures. Others were just staring at her with gratitude and awe. "Thank you. You saved us. God bless you. You're a hero." The young mother with the baby stood up, tears streaming down her face. She grabbed Maya's hand. "My son is alive because of you," she said, sobbing. "I'll never forget this. Never. Thank you. Thank you so much." Maya looked down at the baby, who had finally stopped crying. He was looking up at her with wide, innocent eyes. "What's his name?" Maya asked softly. "Daniel," the mother said. "His name is Daniel." "Hello, Daniel," Maya said, gently touching the baby's hand. "You're going to have quite a story to tell when you grow up." The mother laughed through her tears. Maya continued down the aisle. Every passenger wanted to thank her. Every person wanted to shake her hand, hug her, tell her she was a hero. The businessman from the aisle seat stood up, his eyes red. "I didn't even know your name," he said. "I sat next to you and didn't know who you were. You're incredible." "I'm just someone who was in the right place at the right time," Maya said. "No," he said firmly. "You're someone who chose to help when you could have stayed silent. That's what makes you a hero." As Maya stepped off the plane, she was met by what looked like 100 people. Airport personnel. FAA officials. Media crews with cameras. And standing in front of them all were dozens of people in Air Force uniforms. Pilots in flight suits, officers in dress blues. And leading them was a familiar face. Maverick had landed his F-35 and rushed to the terminal. He stood at attention and saluted her. Maya, out of pure instinct, saluted back. "Welcome home, Phantom," Maverick said. "We've missed you." The other Air Force personnel saluted as well. A wall of salutes stood a wall of respect. Maya felt tears streaming down her face now, not trying to hide them anymore. "I've missed you too," she said. "I've missed all of this." Another pilot stepped forward. A young woman, maybe 25 years old. "Captain Rodriguez? I'm Lieutenant Kim. I just graduated from F-35 training last month. You're the reason I joined the Air Force. When I was a little girl, I saw a news story about the first female F-35 pilots. You were one of them. You inspired me to believe I could do it too." Maya looked at this young pilot, seeing herself from years ago. The determination, the passion, the dream. "How's your training going?" Maya asked. "Good, ma'am, hard, but good. I'm stationed at Nellis now." "That's where I trained," Maya said. "It's a good base. You'll learn a lot there." "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you leave? If you don't mind me asking." Maya took a breath. It was a question she'd asked herself 1,000 times. "I thought I was tired," she said honestly. "I thought I wanted a normal life. I thought hiding my skills would make me happy. But today, I learned something. Some skills are too important to hide. Some gifts are meant to be shared. And sometimes, the thing you're running from is exactly what you need." Lieutenant Kim nodded, understanding in her eyes. A crowd of reporters pushed forward, cameras flashing, microphones extended. "Captain Rodriguez. Can you tell us what happened up there? Is it true you restarted the engines using military procedures? How does it feel to save 284 lives? Will you return to the Air Force?" Maya looked at all the cameras. All the attention. All the visibility she had tried to avoid for 3 years. But she didn't feel scared anymore. She felt proud. "My name is Captain Maya Rodriguez," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the crowd. "Call sign Phantom. I served 12 years in the United States Air Force as an F-35 Lightning II pilot. I left active duty 3 years ago because I thought I wanted a normal, invisible life. But today, I used every skill I learned in the military to help save 284 lives. And I'm proud to have been able to do that." "Will you return to active duty?" a reporter asked again. Maya looked up at the sky. She could still see the fading contrails spelling out her name. She could still hear the sound of the F-35s flying overhead. She looked at Maverick, at Lieutenant Kim, at all the pilots surrounding her. "Yes," she said. "I think I will. Because today reminded me that I'm not meant to be invisible. I'm meant to fly." The crowd erupted in applause. Maverick stepped forward and extended his hand. "Welcome back, Phantom," he said. "The Air Force needs pilots like you. The next generation needs instructors like you. And we've missed having you in the sky with us." Maya shook his hand, then pulled him into a hug. "Thank you for writing my name in the sky," she said. "Thank you for reminding me who I am." "You never stopped being Phantom," Maverick said. "You just forgot for a little while." 6 months later, Maya stood on the flight line at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. She was wearing her flight suit again. Her name tag read, Captain Rodriguez. Her call sign patch on her shoulder, Phantom. She was back. Really back. The Air Force had welcomed her with open arms. They gave her an instructor position, training the next generation of F-35 pilots. They gave her her old call sign back. They gave her a purpose again. But more than that, they gave her a family. A community, a place where she belonged. A group of young pilots approached her on the flight line. They were nervous, excited, eager. "Captain Rodriguez," one of them said. A young man, maybe 23 years old. "I'm Lieutenant Chin. I'm starting F-35 training next week. I wanted to meet you. You're the pilot who saved Flight 2847. You're a legend, ma'am." "I'm not a legend," Maya said with a smile. I'm just a pilot who remembered her training when it mattered. Ma'am, can you teach us? Another pilot asked, a young woman with bright, determined eyes. We want to learn from the best. Maya looked at these young pilots. She saw herself in them. The passion, the dedication, the desire to be excellent. Yes, she said. I'll teach you. I'll teach you everything I know. Because someday, someone's life might depend on what you learn here. And when that moment comes, you need to be ready. The young pilots nodded eagerly. First lesson, Maya said. Never hide your skills. Never be afraid to step forward when you're needed. And never forget that being a pilot isn't just about flying. It's about using your skills to help people. To save lives. To make a difference. Yes, ma'am, they said in unison. Maya smiled. She felt complete for the first time in 3 years. Let's get started, she said. They walked together toward the training building. But Maya paused and looked up at the sky. An F-35 was taking off from the runway, its afterburners glowing bright orange in the morning sun. It climbed steeply, defying gravity, reaching for the sky. Beautiful, powerful, free. Maya heard a voice behind her. Ready for your flight, Phantom. She turned. It was Maverick. He was her wingman now. They flew together twice a week, training exercises and patrol missions. Always ready, Maya said. They walked to their aircraft together. Maya climbed the ladder and settled into the cockpit of her F-35. She strapped in. She ran through her pre-flight checks. Everything was familiar. Everything was right. This was where she belonged. She closed her canopy. She started her engines. The roar of power filled her ears. Tower, Phantom requesting taxi clearance. Phantom, you're cleared to taxi runway 21 left. Welcome back, ma'am. It's good to have you home. Maya smiled behind her oxygen mask. Home. Yes, this was home. She taxied to the runway. She lined up center line. She pushed the throttles forward to military power, then into afterburner. The F-35 accelerated down the runway. Faster, faster, the speed built rapidly. 100 knots. 120 knots. 140 knots. Rotate speed. She pulled back on the stick. The nose lifted. The ground fell away. She was flying again. And this time, she wasn't hiding. This time, everyone knew who she was. Captain Maya, Phantom Rodriguez. Fighter pilot. Instructor. Hero. Legend. The F-35 climbed into the brilliant blue sky, leaving a contrail behind. From the ground, it looked like a line drawn straight up into heaven. Maya looked down at the base below, getting smaller and smaller. She looked at her wingman flying beside her. She looked at the vast sky ahead. She had tried to be invisible. She had tried to hide her light. But some lights are too bright to hide. Some voices are too important to silence. Some names are meant to be spoken. And when the engines failed and the F-35 spoke her name, Maya Rodriguez remembered the truth. She was Phantom. She was a fighter pilot. And she was finally, truly home.